Would you be interested in an intervention plan that works for a second grader and a 10th grader? In other words, what if there was a streamlined roadmap for working with almost any older reader that you could rely on, so you didn't have to pull your hair out all the time searching for the right thing, depending on whether you had a kid at the 3rd grade level or you had a student at the 7th grade level? Well, tonight I want to share with you that such a thing is possible. In fact, it is the same pathway that I use year after year with student after student of all ages and all types for beginning intervention, and often for solving most of their reading problems. So I'm excited to share that with you tonight and give you a freebie, a little fun thing I'm calling the game of intervention. This will be a one-page overview of what I'm going to talk about tonight, and it'll also give you hyperlinks to various articles and other freebies, so if you want to implement an activity, you'll know based on this one page where to go. So I'm excited to share that with you tonight. I am Dr. Marnie Ginsberg from Reading Simplified, and welcome. We've got a lot of people here. I'm so excited to see where you all are from and who's in the house. So share with us all where you are and whom or who you teach. Maybe you're a parent, maybe you are a teacher. I'd love to hear from you. Oh, it looks like Facebook has given me a new little symbol. I'm getting a heart over here, so that's nice, whoever gave me that. So Bethany, hello. Hello, Sally. Jennifer says, welcome back. Thank you. Yes, I was on vacation 3 weeks. Can you believe it? I've never had such a long vacation. It's been very restorative. Peggy, welcome. Megan, Candace, I'm so glad you're here. In West Australia, it's good. It's a good morning. Good morning. It's 11, I bet. The 11th, rather, I mean to say. Welcome to Brenda in Tucson. Hi, Sally. Welcome back. She says, hope your vacation was amazing. It was. It's probably the best vacation of our life. And I've been working on Reading Simplified kind of relentlessly for about 3 years, maybe 4. It depends on when you count the start. And that was a really needed break. So thank you for all of you who've been tracking with us on that. Beth says she is excited to be here and get some information. Yeah, if you're just joining us, we're going to be sharing how just one simple general path or roadmap, if you will, guides me for teaching anyone who's struggling with reading, particularly if they're older, if they're maybe a 2nd grader and they're a little behind, or maybe they're a 5th grader, or an 8th grader, or an 11th grader. I generally follow the same path, and it's not that complicated, so I don't want you to have to scrounge around for something new every time you have a different reader, a different level, because the pathway is pretty consistently the same, especially for beginning the intervention path. So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you tonight. This pathway, this roadmap, if you will, we'll call it the game of intervention. I'll be giving this away, and it's not a game for kids, it's just a roadmap for you with lots of hyperlinks to get the resources you need so that you have a path that's easy for so many of your kids. So I'm excited for all of you who are here. I'm not able to catch up with everybody. Kay and Katie and Dima and Michelle and Alicia and Bethany and Maria, Deborah and Chris, thank you for coming. I'm so sorry if I missed someone. So let me tell you what's going to happen tonight. I'm going to share with you why this simple roadmap, why it's possible that one kind of pathway can work for so many different people. Then I'm going to share with you 2 case studies, a young case study and an older case study, and how they both use the same path, just as an example of what I'm trying to claim here. And then we're going to go to the roadmap, and I'll show you, I'll kind of walk you through the activities, the main steps to get a struggling reader of any age to proficiency, or at least proficiency in their word attack and their word reading, so that maybe there needs to be further work on comprehension. A lot of times I find that further work is not needed, but it definitely could be. But this is the main beginning path that will resolve most of your readers' problems most of the time. And it doesn't take that long. I'll show you in the case studies that these 2 students made profound gains in either 6 hours or 12 hours of instruction. That's in a one-on-one setting with the tutor, but maybe you double it for the classroom or triple it. Still, based on the outcomes that we're going to share tonight, I think it will be pretty impressive that something can happen this quickly, and it can happen that quickly for you as well. So that's why I'm so passionate about getting this message out here, that intervening with readers who are older doesn't have to be that complicated. It's really just a simple path. It's not 1,000 different things. This is the core of what we do. Okay, so I'm so glad that so many people are here. Welcome, welcome. So let's dive into why this one pathway could be even possible for so many different readers. Well, the reason that this pathway is even possible is that almost all readers who are struggling lack the core foundation of being a good reader. In other words, they are not strong in sound symbol processing. They don't line up each individual sound with each individual grapheme or letter sound. And when that processing is not pure and automatic and fast, then the reading system breaks down from there. And I have a graphic to show you an example of how this system is built one on top of each other. See there at the bottom, we have that sound-based decoding. That is the foundation. And almost all of our kids who are struggling are not good at that. Reading research keeps revealing that phonological decoding, word identification, word accuracy, whatever you want to call it, is a hallmark of weak reading. So why do we worry about the top of the pyramid when the bottom of the pyramid is a much broader base and is mostly the problem? Let's dive to the bottom, shore up the foundation, and then work on the layers that come after that. So sound-based decoding, sound symbol processing, phonological decoding, phonological recoding. There's so many names for it. Word attack. I usually call it sound-based decoding because it makes sense to me. If there's some other term that you use, I'd love to know. That is the foundation. We're going to create the path today that will shore up that foundation. Then kids read more accurately, and they start to memorize sight words. So that's what word identification is. It's built, a solid foundation of word identification is built on the sound-based decoding foundation. And then they become automatic, they become fluent, and then comprehension naturally flows out of that. Now the triangle metaphor is not totally literal, because you can comprehend before you can even have sound-based decoding. So that's what the triangles are supposed to show. There's a little, everything is interconnected and bidirectional, but the main foundation for becoming a good reader is that sound-based decoding. So that's why the same path can work for so many kids. Okay? So that's why this roadmap I'm going to share with you is so pivotal. The foundation of sound-based decoding is cracked, and they all need pretty much the same thing. Even if they're 10th grade, they may need what they didn't get in kindergarten, first or second. Okay, so that's point number one, that the reason the roadmap is pretty similar for almost all readers is that the foundation of sound-based decoding is not strong. So let me show you some case studies that will help you maybe believe me. So this roadmap I'm going to show you, as soon as I show you these case studies, was the exact set of activities I used with this 10th grade student and then a 2nd grade student I'm going to share with you. So some of you who've been here a while have heard about this 10th grade student. I worked with him last year. This is a dramatic example, but this one is not different than most of the examples of students who work with the Reading Simplified approach. They rapidly make these types of gains. So this was a 10th grader. I started working with him about April last year. His word attack, that's that foundation, the sound-based decoding. It was like a first grader in the 7th month. So do you think he was struggling with his reading system? Yes. And although he had compensated in an amazing way, because his word ID was 9.0, in other words, his ability to recognize real words was 9.0, his ability to recognize the nonsense words like slump was that 1.7. And the nonsense words aren't important in and of themselves because we don't read nonsense words, but it shows the underlying sound-based decoding skill, that foundation, which we were talking about. I should pull it up in case you just popped in. That's the foundation for reading, and that was what he was lacking. He was poor in sound-based decoding there at the bottom of the triangle, and that was a 1.7 for word attack. So his passage comprehension was also suffering because he's working so hard to attack the words. He didn't have much mental power for processing meaning. So he was 10th grade comprehending at the 5th grade level. So he was struggling in school. By August, after doing the activities that I'm about to show you, he moved in word attack to the 10th grade. So that's a gain of over 8 grade levels in just 12 hours of instruction because we got to the core of his problem. It's not because I did anything special. It's not because he did some other programs. It was just because he had never really gotten direct instruction to solve this purple strand of the triangle. So we did that, and guess what? He grew those 8 years in word attack or sound-based decoding, but it also impacted his comprehension. Look at his comprehension score. What do you think of that young man? He worked hard, and it made a difference, right? He was comprehending meaning in text like a 16th grader, whatever that is, something in college, right? Over 10-year growth for him in comprehension, even though, as you'll see, mostly what we practiced was working on his decoding, his word identification. So that is what you have the potential to do as well. I'm just checking to see if anybody else has some terms that they use for sound-based decoding. It's great to see so many of you. Katie, yep. Of course you're still teaching, Zach. Yeah. And Diane, welcome. Glad you're here. Oh, Debbie, you're kind. And we've got Megan and Camacho and Jennifer. Thank you. I'm sorry Brenda's not getting sound. If anybody else can type something to her, like maybe refresh her screen, that might help Brenda. Thank you. Jennifer says that in our instruction, a lot of times we're spending too much on analyzing text, not enough time is spent making sure kids know how to read first. Yes, it's not that the analyzing of text is not important. It's dire. It's desperately important. But if we do it in the wrong order, we're always going to be banging our head against the wall because that foundation is not shored up. And so get the order right and solve the problem quickly at the foundation, and then the rest will come afterwards. Oh, thank you, Mim, for giving Brenda a suggestion. Thank you. That's very thoughtful. And Mim asked, how do you measure word attack skills? So I use the Woodcock-Johnson word attack test. It is a list of nonsense words. They get progressively harder. So they might first start with op, and then go to something like slump, and then go to something to like monglustomer, multi-syllable nonsense words. All right, so that's what word attack is. The reason that you do a nonsense word is that those students can't have possibly ever seen that and have it in their sight word vocabulary, and so that's why it's a great measure of that foundational sound-based decoding. Okay. And Kylie, says she talks a lot about phonological awareness for sound-based decoding. Yes, exactly. And what the activities we're going to talk about in the roadmap tonight will definitely emphasize that. If you're just joining us, we're going to be moving on to talk about this roadmap for intervention. But right now I'm just explaining the fact that it's actually possible that it can work for so many different grade levels. So we saw huge growth with this 10th grader with the activities that I'm about to show you. Didn't really do anything different for him in general than I did for the 2nd grade girl, which I just finished working with, who I've just finished working with. She only worked with me for 6 hours because her parents wanted to save money and finish working with her themselves. So they didn't consider this, resolved. And yet, after just 6 hours, look at her growth in word attack, that's sound-based decoding. She was in April of 2nd grade, like a beginner in 2nd grade. So she was about 7 or 8 months behind. After the 6 hours with the activities I'm going to show you, she was at the 3rd grade, 7th month. So she made a year and 7 months growth in 6 hours of instruction over just 2 months. How does that sound to you? Wouldn't that be great? She was then shoring up her sound-based decoding foundation. She made a little growth in word identification there, 4 months. That's kind of normal. It takes longer in time to get that. But once you have the shored up foundation with the word attack, then word identification comes over time after that. But passage comprehension also went up significantly, almost a whole year, even though we didn't, again, really focus explicitly on, as Jennifer says, analyzing text or talking a lot about text. We read text and I asked her to summarize it, but mostly the change was because her underlying processes for how she understood text started to take root, get strong, get fast, and so she had mental space to think about the meaning of the text. So that is what is the potential for your students as well. Again, 2nd grade, 5th grade, what have you, I almost always see the same pattern of outcomes that these activities I'm going to share with you in this thing I'm calling the game of intervention work the same pattern, work to show the same pattern of outcomes. So that is super exciting because we don't have time to waste, right? We especially don't have time to waste for our strugglers, okay? You know that well. Sylvia says, thank you, Marnie, for these videos and for the Reading Simplified Academy. Oh, you're welcome, Sylvia. I'm so glad you're in there. I'm super excited to implement this information in her classroom. Yay! Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, Sylvia. Thank you. Okay, so are you ready? Let's get into the promised game of intervention. So I just put this together because I'd been getting some questions from teachers about who were maybe 3rd grade teachers or 6th grade teachers or even high school teachers, and they were commenting that their kids were struggling. They wondered what they should do next. Some of them had done Switch It, which many of you have tried. But I realized, goodness, whether they're a 3rd grade teacher or even a high school teacher, if they need to intervene with the students, it's going to be the same pathway. And so that's what this little diagram is doing. The first thing that's super important here is that you assess your students with a nonsense word test. The reason this is so important is because it's almost never done and you don't have this information, and that's why most of us don't realize that that's the real root of our problem. Like I said, I find it's 99% of the time the main problem. I'd be curious to see if you find that too, depending on what kind of instructional methods you have in your area. It may vary a little bit, but by and large, especially in America, sound-based decoding is the core problem. So you assess them with a nonsense word test. Now, let's see if this will work. If this PDF, when I give it to you, will have hyperlinks to places to get the freebies. So if I click this assess right here, let's see, that should send you to readingsimplified.com, where we have a free nonsense word reading test linked. It's not one that we've produced, but it will be there, something you can find, and then you can get a grade level. So if you scroll down through this blog post, you'll find a couple of tests, including a nonsense word test that is normed, so you can compare your age student with other kids' ages. It's not the best test in the world because it's free and it's just a small sample that it was originally created with, small sample of kids, but it's better than nothing. If you have some sort of measure other than that, then great, go for it. But that will be at least one thing to help you realize, oh yeah, I've got a 5th grader here, and the end of grade test or the MAP test or the STAR test or the DRA test, it's telling he's got a comprehension problem. He's not comprehending on grade level, but is it really, what's the real problem? What's the root of the problem? So please start with assessing. Now you can certainly assess more comprehensively than that, but I know you probably, especially if you're an older, you teach older kids, this is maybe not even your main job to teach them to read like a beginner. That's what I was faced with when I was a 6th grade teacher with 80 students. So just to cut to the chase, the nonsense word test is the ticket. If you go to that blog post that's there, you'll also see a little bit more. You can get in depth, but that's number one. Okay, number two, then group your students, if you have more than one, based on their level of word attack. You'll find a lot of similarities that way. And so there's some information about grouping when you click that. Okay, so that's just priming the pump, getting you prepared to deal with your students. Okay. And then let's start with the activities, okay? The main ones are going to come here at the beginning, all in a row, because you want to just get started and do as full of a Reading Simplified session as you can. So first we start with Switch It. Most of you know about that activity if you've been following us for a while, but if you don't, just click that link. It's a super easy activity where kids manipulate letters, sounds in and out of words with the focus on the sounds in the words, the phonemic awareness, the phonemic manipulation, the phonemic segmentation. At the same time, they're learning the code. They're learning the letter sounds, particularly the consonants, the short vowels, and the consonant digraphs. So Switch It is the best way to get anyone started who is behind, no matter what their age is. I almost never see a kid who struggles with reading who knows all their short vowels. Do you see that too? It's crazy. In fact, this 10th grader, he was reading all these crazy words that he had memorized, but he didn't know any short vowels. And so Switch It clears that up. It also clears up the weak phonemic processing that kind of got the whole problem started in the first place. So it's the best activity to get started to shore up the sound-based decoding foundation. Now, the reason that we can do this with a 2nd grader and, as I said, with a 10th grader is that we change the level of the words. So the 2nd grader, I probably started her with like a 4-sound word like help. But the 10th grader, after doing like 5 or 6-sound words like stomp, stamp, stump, that were real words, I probably increased the phonemic challenge even more to nonsense words. So he had to switch splont to splint, and splint to splind, and sprind. And so that really forced him to have that sound-based decoding. How many of you have already been doing Switch It and know that it's a powerful, resetting of how a kid thinks about the code, learns the sounds, and really gets him started with word identification? Anne-Marie says, yeah, she can definitely watch it later. Anybody has the chance to, well, she can probably hear me. Anne-Marie, this will be here on Facebook, so just come back, search through the Facebook feed of Reading Simplified, and you'll find it later. Okay, so Switch It is not something you just start in isolation unless you're just trying it out. Once you know these activities, you do it right back to back with Read It, okay? And Read It is where the student puts the sounds together, and they learn the blend as you read technique. So if you were to click on this link here, Read It, you would go to a blog post to learn about Read It. So these kind of Switch It and Read It are kind of like peanut butter and jelly. And the same thing holds true for what I said earlier about Switch It. So the 2nd grader, maybe I started her on 4 sounds for Read It, and she had to read a word, and then she had to do the blend as you read decoding technique, which you can learn about at that blog post, and then she had to say the sounds as she wrote them. So she might have had the word stop or held, whereas the 15-year-old boy, I probably tried to give him, again, hard words like stomp or stand or spring, and then as soon as that got to be too easy, then I even moved him into nonsense words. And so I might have had him do splunk. It's not really a word, no, because spelunking is a real word, but splunk, probably not. So he's really having to pay attention to blending the sounds as he goes, and he's having to really recognize those short vowels, right? So those two are the first important decoding activity that is going to create that foundation that is needed. Getting kids off of just thinking mostly visually and mostly in terms of letter names, and now thinking more in terms of sounds and letter sounds. It's really reorienting their brain. It's a really rapid process because it's really dives into exactly what they need, but it has a huge impact. So that's the first thing you got to do. But they're still at that point just working with short vowels. So it's not solving all the sound-based decoding problems, but it's getting the foundation kind of, getting it moving. And so many of you, as I bet I've got a lot of dings here from Facebook, many of you have probably experienced that. So let's see what you guys have said about that. Jennifer says, Switch It works really works good to turn on the light bulbs and break the code for kids who just never understood what they were supposed to do with all those sounds. Right. Most of those kids have such poor, weak phonemic awareness that they just didn't get the phonics that they were given until Switch It makes them really connect those two. Absolutely. And Mary Ann says, yes, switch it is the best. And Kylie uses a tracking diagram with consonant in first column, vowel digraph in second column, and various sounds in the third column. For interesting, as long as you are, is each column a new sound? That's what I would recommend, so that they get the really strong phonemic awareness. But that sounds helpful to kind of break it up. With Read It, we break it up by using a card to cover. If the word's here, we'd cover over part of it, but that's another way. That sounds neat. Chris also says, love, switch it. You're welcome, Karen. And yeah, Candace says it really helps the short vowels stick. And Karen asks, where can I find the links for the assessment? No problem. So Karen, when you get this PDF in a minute, right here, you'll just click on most of these game pieces or game board spaces. If you click on it, it will take you to, it'll be a hyperlink to the relevant information that you need. So hopefully that makes sense for you, Karen. Oh yes, exactly. Diane says that switch it is like a reading brain warm-up. Exactly. I keep doing it for kids even if they're in, you know, the 10th hour or the 12th hour, or even if they're going to take longer, maybe just 2 or 3 minutes, a great warm-up. Okay, so we established that switch it and read it pair together to be the word work activities to get the sound symbol system working again, or working for the first time. And then of course you got to read text, okay? So that's what that red space is there. Read text. You want the student to be reading aloud text and the teacher to be coaching them on words they don't know, and kind of being relentless on making sure they get accuracy, because that's what they've been lacking for so long. And what kind of text for a season, and it doesn't have to be a long season, make sure, and this blue space here says, make sure that the text you're reading is aligned with the phonics you're teaching. So if you're doing switch it and read it with the short A and the short I, then pick a text that has a lot of short A and short I words. And if you're doing switch it and read it with all the short vowels, then try to pick a text that has all the short vowels and really practices them, because if we don't get the practice, you know, of more than 1 or 2 words of the thing we're working on word work, that's not going to really transfer. It's just not enough practice. It's kind of like doing math facts with a teacher, and then when your practice comes and you're doing it on a worksheet, it's completely different from the facts you practice with the teacher. We wouldn't do that. So make sure your phonics lesson that you're doing for word work aligns with the text you are doing. And a lot of times historically we haven't wanted to do that because those phonics texts, they can be kind of boring. But the good news is with the Reading Simplified pathway, it only takes 12 weeks, 24 weeks, maybe even 36 weeks, depending on the student's age, some of their challenges, the context, to get them reading authentic literature. So we're not talking about 2 or 3 years of boring phonics text, right? Just really quickly getting them enough sound symbol decoding experience that they can move on. Okay, so that's a great start, and many kids will start there and in 1 week or 2 weeks be ready to move on to sort it. So it doesn't take long to get to that next level. That's right here in this blue. Let's see. There you go. In this blue bar, I put it after that kind of that spiral or target yellow thing, because it's like a shift in your development. Before that, you were doing sound, short vowel sounds. Now you want to move up to advanced phonics sounds. Okay? So that would be the next step. It would be adding a new word work activity, and with Sort It, you're working with advanced phonics, like the O can be the O in go, the O in show, the O in home, the O in, what else have I missed? Joe, the O in note. So how do you cope with all those crazy things in our English language? Sort It is the main activity that will solve that for you. And a lot of times you can then dump Read It here that we learned, got started at the green game piece, and dump it and replace it with Sort It, because they do the same thing except they add the difficulty of advanced phonics. Now, so let's talk about this, the second grade girl. I had her doing Switch It and Read It for maybe 2 or 3 weeks for 2 or 3 hours. So she was still struggling with blending, and I really wanted to practice that, and her short vowels weren't that strong. So we did that, these two right here, we did that for about 2 or 3 different weeks. So see, the hyperlinks work. I didn't mean to click that though. Sorry. There we go. Okay. But then within minutes, or maybe within hours or weeks, then she's also going into sorted because she doesn't have the advanced phonics. We need to get to that quickly. Some kids, especially if you're working with second or third graders, and you don't maybe have that one-on-one environment, maybe you don't want to do it all in 1 week. It might take 2 weeks, but it shouldn't take long to get to sort it. And definitely the older kids go straight into sort it, read it, and then sort it. So this is kind of complicated the way I'm saying it, but the main point is that the activity read it shores up the blending problems that they have, but you really can move quickly into giving them some advanced phonics because they'll still be practicing the short vowels in switch it and in the text. But nevertheless, I put it over here because it's still a big shift moving from short vowels to all that complex advanced phonics. So then you go through sort it for a while. And this is how I have mapped out sort it in Reading Simplified. Sort it is laid out this way with a streamlined pathway. So right here, you would see like this would be step number 1. This is like a 1-page overview of how to get a reader from beginning to end, but it's a different frame of reference. It doesn't have the activities, so just going to show you a different angle on it. So number 1 is the short vowel level. So that's where we would work with switch it and read it. We'd we probably at some point, maybe a week, 2 weeks, depends, move them to the advanced phonics level, and that's what happens at step 2, the O sound and all of its spellings. Then step 3 would be maybe just the very next week, the E sound and all its spellings. The 4th week is A, the sound A and its spellings. The 5th week is the sound I, then a vowel plus E pattern, just to review. The 7th week would be the sound, like the in her, and the in hurt, and the in learn. And so they continue up this pathway doing that sort it activity. Okay? So that's why that takes a little bit more time on our game board, because there's a lot of advanced phonics information to learn. If you think about there's about 240 some odd letter sounds that we've got to learn to be good readers. Most of them, it's like an iceberg. Most of them are below the water surface. We don't really think about them initially because we're just working on the consonants and short vowels, which would be above the water, but there's so much more underneath the surface, so we got to get to that and spend a lot of our time with that. Okay, I'm taking a little longer than I'd hoped, so I'm going to share with you how to get this game, and then I'll keep explaining the rest of the game board, okay, and then answer questions if there are. So this is a game that you can access through Facebook Messenger if you just type the word game in the comments. Then Facebook Messenger, if it works, will trigger an invitation for you to request again. It's kind of a double confirmation that you want to get this PDF. Then you'll have the PDF and you can click to the links to get these different activities. Okay, so I see Chelsea and Jennifer are all over it. Laura says, thank you, you're welcome. Let me know if it works. It worked for me earlier, so go ahead and type game, and then you should see this pop up as an option for you to get in Facebook Messenger. Okay, so we've talked about the beginning of this game of intervention for any age of kid who is behind. After you've done sort it for a while, then you need to move on to multi-syllable words, and that is what we have over here in red. Okay, and multi-syllable words, you can still do the same thing that you were doing with sort it, but just now add multi-syllable words. So let's go back to the streamlined pathway. Say you around here, maybe week 8, week 7, when you thought your students were ready. Maybe let's do week 7. Okay, so instead of just doing sort it with the sound like 1-syllable words, her, hurt, bird, you could transition them into multi-syllable words and also do sort it, so they're learning the advanced phonics, but also learning how to attack those multi-syllable words, and you would do words like number or learning. Okay, so that's what is a big transition point, again, that happens after sort it. And then we're really getting to the end of things. That's putting you kind of to the end of the streamlined pathway. They've been absorbing a ton of phonics information, and now maybe you're transitioning like this, after this yellow target here, maybe you're going to transition more to fluency, and that's what's in this red red box, okay? So we have been doing fluency before, and I forgot to mention that. We've been doing fluency all along. It's a great way to build sight word knowledge as well as fluency, but now you're probably going to transition to emphasizing fluency more. So think about this. These different, I've got 3 big stages here. In the beginning part of the game of intervention, you probably spent this much time on word work and this much time on reading decodable text, and maybe just this much time rereading decodable text. That was part of that early reading text that I forgot to mention. You want them to read, but also reread until they master a short amount of text. But you don't spend too much time on it because you're spending so much time on word work, shoring up the foundation. Then they move into the word work. In this first stage, it can start to decrease as the reading of text increases. So maybe you're spending 10 minutes on word work initially, and then you move it down to 8 minutes or 7 minutes, and then your amount of time for guided reading of a new text is 7 minutes, but then you move it up to 10 minutes, and you move it up to 11 or 12 minutes. It takes up more and more of your session. And then by the time you get to fluency emphasis, the students should have the underlying sound-based decoding skills pretty good. Not fast though, and maybe they have a lot of words they still have to just see a lot of time. So that's when your proportions change. So you might reduce the new text time from 12 minutes to 10 or 9 minutes and increase the rereading for fluency from 2 minutes to 5 minutes or 7 minutes. So there's that shift at the end of the game when you're moving to lots more rereading so that they're getting the dosage of high frequency words that they need to be able to become a good reader. And so you're doing a lot more fluency on the back end of that game of intervention, and then you get to a point where they're pretty good with the sound-based decoding, and they're pretty good with their word identification. Let's see if I can, and here we go. So towards the end of the game of intervention, the sound-based decoding is really shored up. Word identification is starting to kick in. You're working on fluency. And so what you really need at that point is just to read a lot. Read widely and increase the number of minutes that they read, because now each minute spent reading with the foundation strong will yield a lot more results, both for vocabulary, for word identification, for fluency, and for comprehension, understanding of the world, etc. So that is why that last step in the game of intervention is just to start reading lots. And that's when you get into the part where you really should talk about the text a lot more. So rereading for fluency should shrink, word work should shrink, and reading new text and talking about new text should start to become the bigger part of your lesson time. And that should be what most of our kids spend most of their years in school doing. But it doesn't work when we do that before the foundation is shored up. So we've got to get this game of intervention in place for our kids if they're behind, and not flip the triangle on its head and do the comprehension activities as if we're beating our head against the wall before the kids can actually get as much advantage out of it. But once they shore up the foundation, everything starts to stick and connect in powerful ways, and it's a powerful forward snowball. So let's see. Did you get the game? I've been hearing some bings, bings, bings. Okay, Lorianne says thank you. Thank you. Okay. Did anybody else tell me if you've gotten it? I'm not sure. I'm assuming you got it. Oh, Jenny says it worked. Good, good. Shannon says thank you. You're so welcome. Tay, I'm so glad this is going to be helpful for your children. Great. Debbie says she got it. Okay, thank you guys. If you didn't get it, just text in Messenger or comment in Messenger and we'll get it to you. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so Michelle asked a great question. Switch it. Yes, you keep doing it throughout the whole game of intervention. Like Diane said earlier, it's like a nice little brain warm-up. Even if you just do it for a minute, and maybe you get to a point where it's just oral. So can you tell me what sweep is without the w? That's an example of just really making sure that they're getting strong phonemic manipulation and they're really thinking in terms of sounds and symbols. That's really advanced. So yes, we keep doing it, but again, initially it takes up this much time and it just kind of shrinks because they get fast at it. But especially if they're older, it was probably the source of their main weakness. So we don't want them to get rusty. We don't want them to slip back into old habits. We want to keep developing that. It's a processing thing that they're doing. They're learning cognitive flexibility with it, so it can be helpful. Okay. Laura says it just popped up. She's excited because she had kindergartners who you needed to go further into the advanced phonics but wasn't sure what to do. Yes, exactly. A lot of kindergarten teachers tell me that, well, why would you be telling me about this sort it? Because I don't need that. But if you start these activities like Switch It and Read It at the beginning of the year, yeah, you can move into Sort It quite rapidly. So I've been talking about this as a system for older interventions because most of my examples are for that in this case tonight. But the general plan would be similar. It's just that we don't often think that older kids would all be the same. So I just wanted to emphasize that tonight. So are there questions about this? Remember that if I'm talking about something that you've never seen before, you don't really understand, then there's resources to watch videos of how the activity is done and how to give some feedback and what's important, and maybe some word lists. If you click on most of these game pieces that have words on them, okay? So that will get you, that's why it's kind of a little mini training document all in one. So let's see what kinds of questions we've got. Oh, Sally, you're welcome. You are always very gracious to me. Thank you. Let's see. I got two screens going, and you can, if you see my eyes going around, that's what's going on. Sometimes my cursor doesn't get to the right place. Okay. Yes, Angela, Switch It is good for everyone who's a beginner or a struggler. It's just that when you are intervening with older kids, you probably start them at a lot harder words. So the 10th grader example was maybe a 5 or 6 sound word like stomp, and maybe after a couple of words like that, he'd move into even nonsense words. So splink to splind, to splund, to sprund, to really process sounds. But of course, the kindergartners, they're just going to do Sam, sat, hat, hut. So it's just the level of words that changes. And Stacy, you are welcome. I'm so glad this got it. Some of you didn't get it though, so I'm sorry. We will, if we go through it and we'll see if you didn't get it, we'll be able to send it to you. Brenda says she loves the visual ideas that the kids can buy into. Oh, cool. Especially special needs kids. Yes. Yeah. We don't have any time to mess around with them. So, and they can learn this stuff fast as well. They don't have to take the rest of their life to learn how to be readers. We can get them to become readers. Maybe it won't happen in 12 hours, but it can happen in a year. Usually, depending on the severity. That's a good question. Is it appropriate to incorporate the words used in Switch It and such into spelling and spelling assessment? It's certainly fine to do that, and that might help them, it'd help them be more successful with the spelling. I wouldn't make my Switch It lists based on the spelling test, though, as long as you're doing the spelling list based on what do they need in terms of short vowel knowledge or consonant digraph knowledge, and what do they need in terms of phonemic difficulties. So if they're able to do a 4-sound word, I need tomorrow to have words that are 5-sound words. So I'm going to challenge them, continually challenging them. So Switch It is really going to drive their reading to accelerate rapidly. So focus on the purposes of Switch It for designing your word list. And then if it coincidentally helps you with some spelling, that's fine. And maybe it'll help them transfer. Oh, I know how to say these sounds. I can hear them, each individually. Yes, definitely, Tay. I believe so. Okay. Yes, and Diane points out that she uses the sound literacy app for Switch It with her tutoring students. So instead of, if you have seen Switch It with us, most of the time we have, little letter sound cards on a board like this, and sometimes they fly all over the place, right? And so maybe an app where the cards are just digital could be helpful. I do like that one. What other questions do we have there? And then we'll sign off for tonight. How do you know when the kids have it and can use what they learned rather than only doing on the sorted board? Yes. So that's what's so important about good question, Laura. So important about the read text component. That's that red square near the beginning right here. You're going to give them fresh text each day, ideally, that targets the sound they're working on in word work. So for instance, with the sound O, maybe that's the first sound you're doing, you would want them to, here in step 2 in the streamline pathway, you would want them to do an O sound text like Joe and Joan on Monday, and a new one on Tuesday like the soap boat from Starfall, and another one on Wednesday like this from Starfall, Robot and Mr. Mole, and another O sound on Thursday, and another O sound book on Friday. So they're getting a constant dosing of lots of text with the O spelling, and this not necessarily the same words over and over again for the original or the new text. And so you just track as the week goes on, is it becoming easier and easier for them to see the OA in goat or boat or soap or goal and get it a little more quickly. That's your goal, that they're getting it a little bit more quickly on their own, and you are having to give less and less feedback. But they don't have to be perfect by the end of the week, because it's not like it's going to go away. You can review it next week and still move on to E. So that's the general protocol, about a week of new text, and if they're getting better at it, then go on and then keep reviewing through each streamline pathway. When you get to E, do O and E. When you get to A, do a review of O and E and A. And just keep building the review process. The key sentences that we teach at Reading Simplified, which you can find the idea of that in that sorted link, will be a great way of reviewing. Okay, so what is the key sentence for the A sound? Let's let everybody write it. They came to play with the 8 great trains on the table. It's got all the A spellings in there, and they have to reproduce it, and it'll help them trigger what those key spellings are. So that here is sorted, is what Laura has been talking about. Good question. What other questions do we have? Okay, not specifically about this, Jenny says, but I have a student who can read CVC and sight words good when given individually, but within a decodable book, they forget the word or sound. They forget the words or sound out the same word over and over. Ideas for how to help. Okay, so they probably are fairly weak with the blend as you read decoding strategy. So I would make sure that you're doing that with this read it activity here. That's the green space near the beginning of the game of intervention. Oops, I did it again. Sorry. Shore that up with the read it activity, and then even if they're good at, whether they're good at it or not, then especially make sure that you also coach them a lot to transfer that skill into the text. So they're reading and they get to a word. Make sure that you cover up, if this is the word, make sure you this is the word that make sure you cover up the end of the word, so they have to put the sounds together as they go on their own to blend the sounds as they go. That's to help the decoding problem transfer from word work to text. By the way, it's not unusual that they can't do it, because reading a real text is a lot more complicated than just reading one word at a time. There's like this many things going on when we read, and there's just one word in front of us when we have to read a word. So the complexity of the task is usually why this is breaking down for them. But it just shows that they're not automatic, they're not fluent with this skill. So shoring it up is great, and so practicing the coaching of the blend as you read strategy is number one. Sometimes they actually know more than they think they know. So if you think that they've read the word soap in this book, and they've read it 3 times, and there's pictures, and the whole book is about soap, and they're coming up on the 4th time, you might say, I think that you should remember this word, because I bet you do remember. Maybe you not should, but I bet you do remember this word. So give them a little coaching on what you can do, a little coaching on this is something that's probably you're better at than you realize. Sometimes maybe it's you start the book that way. Maybe show them 2 or 3 words that you know they've seen a lot in isolation and say, you're going to see these words and today you're going to get a point every time you read the word without saying the sounds step by step or blending them. But if you just say the word like that, you'll get a point. But if you have to go and decode it, then I'm going to get the point. So it's just kind of a reorientation for some of those kids. And the final thing, Jenny, is make sure they're doing a lot of rereading for fluency. So take the book that they've just practiced for the new. That's what here is embedded kind of in dual purpose here under this red space. They read the text. Initially that's new, but then you read it aloud to them and then they reread it until they get so good at it that those words are now stuck in their brain, and they aren't just for that book, but they'll be stuck in their brain more likely for other books. So hopefully that helps you, Jenny. Sharon is asking for the link. So if you type the word game, Sharon, your Facebook Messenger app should pop up with an opportunity for you to download this PDF here, the game of intervention, and that's where the links come from. Thank you, Jennifer, for helping her there. Y'all are helping one another. Debbie says she loves the hyperlinks. Thank you. Oh, Jennifer, yeah, we need Brenda to know about starfall.com. Absolutely. Great resource for really nice decodables. Are there any other questions, you ladies and gents? Mostly we're ladies tonight. Yep, that reading text part's all about the eyes on print. That's where we're transforming our readers. Once we solve the sound-based decoding system that I'm talking about with switch it and read it and giving them the phonics knowledge through sort it, then they just have to practice with accurate practice and with lots of reading, and that's the eyes on print that she was talking about. So, okay. All right. Well, you're welcome, Maria. I'm glad for all the participation. I'm glad this was something that worked for you. We go live every Tuesday, almost every Tuesday at 8 p.m. for more training on how to short circuit the reading process, whether you work with beginners or strugglers, whether you have kindergartners or older kids. So come back next Tuesday. We'll have some more tips on how to shrink the amount of time it takes to get a kid to be a reader. So thank you for being here, and share it with your friends if you haven't already. I know many of you have already been great sharers, and I really appreciate that. Our mission is to get this in the hands of classroom teachers, special ed teachers, any kind of teacher, and parents, and consultants, and leaders, because teaching doesn't have to be as complicated as we made it. Really, Simplified exists to show that there's a streamlined way that gets all students' reading achievement to be accelerated. And I really believe that to be true. I find it over and over again with my own students, and I see it in teachers like yourself. So thank you for saying that, Jennifer. Thanks for you all, Chris, Tracy, Peggy, Sharon, Shannon. I really appreciate you hanging in there. So thanks and good night.